Joining me now to talk about the big takeaways is Amitabh Kant, CEO of NITI Aayog. Mr. Kant, thank you so much for taking time out for us, sir. Before we talk about the broader budget, I think what's really got the market and economy watchers excited is the finance minister's comments on disinvestment, with specific reference to both privatization and divestment. She talked about strategic sectors and non-strategic sectors that NITI Aayog would be working closely in terms of identifying. We'd love to hear more details on that, sir.
So, Mitali, one is that this budget clearly brings in predictability and consistency in government's thinking as far as disinvestment is concerned. It clearly lays down the roadmap, but it goes a step further and says that there'll be only strategic sectors in which government will be there, and there'll be only 3 or 4 public sectors in those areas. And those strategic sectors are really atomic energy, space, and defense, number one; transport and telecom, number two; power, petroleum, coal, and other minerals is number three; and banking, insurance, and finance are number four. And there are many public sectors in these areas. What the government is saying is that there will be just 3 or 4, and in other areas, the government should go out of business. That is, and allow the private sector to be there. But I think the more important thing than just the disinvestment bit, because she's laid down a clear roadmap that what the government will do in disinvestment this year. She's announced a number of companies also. But to my mind, the more important thing is that she talks at length about asset monetization. And that is really the key, because the challenge before Indian economy is about gross capital formation, and investment rates have fallen in Indian economy. And we need to push that. That is the number one challenge. And if you need to push investments, then you need to actually bring in a huge amount of private sector. But private sector is presently shy of investing, and therefore she says that across road, rail, highways, warehouses, sports stadium, gas pipelines, and power grid, we will do asset monetization. We will push these. And with asset monetization, private sector will come in, and private sector will bring debt along with it. And therefore, you will earn a lot of resources through that, and you will be able to build new public investment with this. And therefore, you will create a cycle of investment, asset monetization, new resources coming in, more investments into the infrastructure sector. Thirdly, I think the key is that she's also talked about assisting the states and nudging the states, and that is a very important thing to my mind. She creates a funds for the states for infrastructure, and she says that we will nudge the states into doing private sector investment in the states also. So these are really the big challenge to my mind was about a gross capital formation, which she addresses head on with a huge emphasis on investment, infrastructure, asset monetization, nudging the states. All these are really the key to her budget philosophy.
Let me ask you for some more granular details on that then, sir, in terms of, monies that you think would be allocated against all those verticals. How much do you think is the intent to raise via asset monetization, as also the fact that she alluded to, selling some of the physical assets, such as excess land that the government holds at this point? Has any exercise already been conducted in terms of what figures one could strike against those figures, against those headings?
So we in NITI Aayog have done a lot of work on asset monetization, and she's talked about creating a national infrastructure pipeline, which will be done shortly. A dashboard will be prepared, but a lot of homework with different ministries has already been done on national infrastructure pipeline and on asset monetization pipeline, and I think that is the way to move forward. On the monetization of land, which is again very important because a lot of public sector land is available with different ministries and different CPSUs. She's talked about a special purpose vehicle. While we do not have exact figures right now, but I think the details of the land and the details of the assets which need to be monetized, that work has already been done.
I imagine a timeline has also been set out on the divestment side of things, Mr. Kant. Assuming that the market will need to absorb all that paper when it does hit quarter
Yeah.
after quarter. Has some kind of timeline already been put in place? I
Yeah,
mean, I
so
did.
divestment was impacted due to COVID-19 for a long period of time. But now that we are back to normalcy, we'll drive it, and I can assure you that both the divestment will take a very major impetus. We are at very advanced stage in a number of public sector enterprises, but we are also at a very advanced stage as far as asset monetization is concerned.
Will LIC be the first one to hit the market?
Well, several LIC, Air India, BPCL, BML, Concor, all of them are in pipeline.
There was quite a bit of excitement amongst the infrastructure community to hear about the DFI as well, Mr. Kant. Any more details you'd like to share with us on the form and structure of that?
So, we've been working on this DFI for a long time. You need an institution, and she's provided 20,000 crore for that. For long-term lending, one of the basic problems of lending from the banks is that there is a mismatch between loans that are taken and the repayment, because most of the lending into banks is for a period of 5 years. And therefore, this DFI was necessary if we have to do asset creation. But my view is that it's not just the government. You need not just one DFI, you need many, many DFIs over a long period of time. You need larger resources to flow into infrastructure, long-term money of 30 years, 20 years, 10 years to flow in, which cannot come from banks, which need to come from various sources.
What is the arc as you see it in terms of spending on capital expenditure over the next couple of quarters, Mr. Kant? As you said, that is what is of urgent essence at this point in order to resume economic activity and kickstart growth again. How would you see this spread over the next couple of quarters?
So basically my view is that in both the national infrastructure pipeline will enable us to push for infrastructure creation in a very big way. And the FM has talked about an increased outlay of about 35% for infrastructure creation. I envisage that we will take it beyond that in the coming year.
How much beyond, you think?
I have a feeling that there'll be increased demand for infrastructure creation because a lot of spade work has been done in terms of roads. We are very clear on railway side what needs to be done. A lot of work has happened on the railways, but a more impetus will be given on railways. We will also, I think, a lot of more resources will be raised for investment through the asset monetization process.
One point of observation, Mr. Kant, especially with regards to infrastructure projects, has been, the bottleneck in terms of clearing financial dues. Will the dashboard consider setting up something that will also look at whether or not financial dues have been cleared up for projects ongoing?
So, Mithali, one of the points which FM has talked about is, easiness, simplicity, and a process of conciliation. That is, before you get into any kind of legal disputes, etc., try and solve them through conciliation. And our experience with the national highway has been very useful and very effective. A lot of cases, a lot of disputes of roads, etc., have been sorted out through the process of, we have 3 different committees in national highway, and majority of the cases get settled at the level of the conciliation committees, where there's a lot of give and take and due diligence done at that level, and most of the disputes are able to sort out. What she said is that this institutional process of conciliation should be taken to all other public sector undertakings and institutionalized, and that should help us sort out this, because then the dues of the contractors and those who are executing projects are not held up. The other thing which the government has done is to ensure that those whose dues are held up, where arbitration has gone against government or CPSU, 75% of that amount should be repaid if you want to go and appeal. And the appeal should not be just like that. It should be approved. The appeal should be approved by the Solicitor General or at the highest level. And therefore, the public sectors have no other option but to respect the arbitration order and to cuff up 75% in case you want to go and appeal. And these are both very far-reaching decisions.
The finance minister did, allude to the viability of discoms becoming a running concern as well,
Yeah.
Mr. Kant. And one suggestion that's been put forth is to create some kind of, one tariff rate across the country. Whatever that rate may be, let's fix it at one. Is that something that is being considered, sir?
Yeah, but one thing which none of you have noticed is the what FMS said in the budget is about having more than one supplier, more than one supplier. That what she's saying is that you can have the you can have the discom, the wire net, the you can have many suppliers of electricity in Delhi, so or in any other place location. So that will open up competition, and competition will lead to reduction in rates over a period of time. And logically, what she's pushed for is a huge allocation for uh, smart metering, etc. And over a period of time, we should be able to arrest our losses in many of these non-performing. But tomorrow, if as a consequence of this, what will happen is if many players come in the discom sector, the discom which is not performing will go bust and the other will take over. So this is a very far-reaching move in the electricity sector. It's a very far-reaching move. So states which do not perform, discoms which do not perform, will just go bust, and a new company will take over.
How soon could this happen, and how many players will be allowed to enter, a city or a space?
I think the details will be worked out, but this is broadly what I could read from the announcement. But I think it's a very far-reaching, very radical move, and this will bring in efficiency and competition.
Hmm. Let me end then by asking you on your own thoughts of how the economy will progress over the next few quarters, Mr. Khan. There is recovery, of course, but there seems to be, increasing consensus on the fact that the recovery is extremely disparate for different sections of the economy. Are you concerned about what's happening with the bottom end of this pyramid?
So, Mitali, my view is that this budget does not look at just the recovery, but looks at sustained growth over a long period of time. And I think that's the right approach to see how we can get back into 8 to 9% of growth on a sustained basis over a long period of time. And actually, the budget lays down the roadmap for that for the next 3 years. So if you look at this budget along with many other structural reforms that have been carried out in the Indian economy as a part of the Atmanirbhar package program, mining, coal, etc., and this budget in totality, then you realize that the government is pushing for greater private play, the government is pushing for greater productive efficiency, and what it's saying is that the government's role is really in education, health, nutrition, but all other areas should be opened up for private sector to bring in efficiency, and that is the right approach. And as far as fiscal deficit is concerned, I would merely say that 6.8%, that if you do not spend now, it'll be too late, and you'll have many MSMEs and which are non-performing assets, and therefore this is the time to spend resources on MSMEs, and rather than have calamity on a later day, because the larger corporates, the top 30-40 corporates, have really done well. But it's the MSME where credit flow must take place, and credit flow is the key to ensuring that MSMEs are on the right track. And countries which have grown in the past have grown on the back of credit flows, and banks must lend. And banks lending was a function of what the FM has done today: capitalize them, additionality, and secondly, ensure that there is really there's a reconstruction and asset company which will look at bad assets and then clean them up and move forward. So far-reaching changes have been brought in today. We just need to now push for greater and better implementation on ground. That is really the key. The focus has to be on infrastructure, and better implementation, and implementation.
No, absolutely. There is no argument on that front. Implementation certainly is key. Thank you so much, sir, for taking time out and speaking with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.